this meeting. This is a meeting of the Fishtown District's Safety Committee. We thought it was important to have Captain Fisher as well as officers Jose Doñez and Cinnamon Smith on the call with us. As I sent out in the email to everybody, just want to set a few ground rules as we move forward. Since we initially went to schedule this, Captain Fisher nor any of his officers are permitted to speak about what occurred on June 1st, both before, during, or after. As we all know, there are investigations going on, so they cannot comment on it any further. So we're not going to talk about that today. Fishtown District has taken the position. As there are active investigations going on, we will await the decisions made by those investigations before having any further comment or taking any further action. But that being said, there's still much to do and much that we want to get into regarding discussing safety measures along our corridor, as well as actions taken to help rebuild confidence and trust. Just a little bit about the procedure of the meeting today. We're going to keep everybody muted. For those that were on the call we had a couple weeks ago, it tends to get a little out of control with everybody speaking over each other. So the way we'll conduct this meeting is, after my brief intro, we'll have any of our elected officials, if they want to make a quick statement. Then we'll go to Captain Fisher to make a statement. I will have some questions. Then I'm going to turn it over to Kay as director of the Safety Committee, who has many, many questions. Then we're going to turn it over to make sure that all of you have an opportunity. As I've learned, and as I've certainly told everybody as part of our committee, how lucky we are to have such thoughtful, engaged, and passionate and respectful, caring people along our corridor. That's how we know that we're going to be able to effectuate good, positive change to help police this area, to help security, to help find creative ways and interventions to respond to it that may not involve the police. And so we ask that when questions are being asked, you can be direct, but certainly be respectful to each and every one of us. But again, please stick to those rules so that we can have a very productive meeting. Before I go on any further, I know Representative Isaacson's on the call. Representative, do you have any quick opening remarks before we get started?
Nothing prepared. I'm just here to listen, participate, and make sure that if there's anything that I can help and assist with, that I know about it and I'm aware of it. So if anybody has any questions for me, or there's something you want to ask about that my office will be able to assist with, I'm here to listen and see what I can do to help, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I know both Matt and Marissa are on from Senator Farnese's office. Do either of you have anything to add or state before we get started?
Nothing to add. Thank you very much, Mark, for putting this together. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for being here. Is Councilman Squilla on? Or anyone from his office? Having heard none, we're going to get right into it. Thank you again, Captain Fisher, for taking the time and talking to us today. I wanted to, for everybody's sake, from many of our people on this call don't really know much about you. So I figured I'd give you this a little opportunity to not only give a statement to everyone, but also give a little bit of your background. So, Captain, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I've been on the job 14 years. I've been in a lot of assignments, pretty much almost everywhere in the city. Started out in the 18th District in West Philly, then transferred to the 1st and South. Got promoted to sergeant, went to the 16th in West Philly, then transferred out to the 2nd District up in Northeast Philly. Got promoted to lieutenant, went back down to South Philly into the 17th District, transferred again back into the Northeast, into the 15th District. I made captain, and I was assigned to the PAB. I was there for 5 months, and then I was transferred over to the 24th District. I was there for 7 months, and then I was transferred over here to the 26th. That's pretty much a nutshell about me. I grew up in the city, primarily in Southwest Philadelphia. Moved to the Northeast when I was about 27 years old, lived there for 8 years. and now I'm outside the city. But I'm a city guy at heart.
Captain, how long have you been with us in the 26th?
7 months.
In the 7 months, how many officers are assigned to the 26th district? I'd like to give everybody sort of an insight of what the inner makings of what goes on in the district.
Okay. All right. Well, right now we have 126 police officers assigned to the 26th district. Those numbers are skewed a little bit because that's not how many we have actually working. Out of the 126, we have 17 that are out injured. We have 8 detailed out. We have 1 on long-term sick. We have 5 that are restricted duty. We have 8 that are part of the administrative staff / neighborhood resource staff. We have 2 officers who are strictly assigned to work our body cameras. We have 7 officers who are in our VCR, which is a violent crime reduction team. And we have 3 school beats who are mainly school assigned related jobs. And then 2 bike officers who work the front and Girard corridor. So you add those numbers up, that's 53 officers, minus that from the 126, and we have 73, I should say, that are like actually the officers who are out on answering the jobs and responding to calls for service. And that's divided into 3 squads with 3 different letter groups each. So I'm going to break down the numbers for you in a little bit. 1 squad, 2 squad, and 3 squad. That's our squads that handle our jobs. We have 29 officers assigned to 1 squad, 25 officers assigned to 2 squad, and 22 officers assigned to 3 squad. So every 13 days, we have 3 letter groups in each squad, A, B, and C. So every 13 days, all those letter groups will work together. So one day every 13, they all work together. The other 12 is only 2 groups working. So on average, we have about 8 to 9 officers who are scheduled off on that day, which brings our totals down to about 19 officers, depending on the squad that's working. We also have officers that are assigned to work in the operations room. So that even lowers our number of officers who are on the street. So pretty much any given night, our best case scenario is having 3 cars cover each of our PSAs. We have 3 PSAs and then a patrol wagon covering the entire district. So our best case scenario is 11 officers on the street. And that's not enough to cover a district safely and adequately. So, and with summer vacation coming up and with the COVID, we have state mandated training that we have to do. And with the COVID, that was shut down for 3 months. So now we're kind of trying to play catch up. So we're sending a lot of officers to that training because if they don't get all that training done within the calendar year, they won't be allowed to work the street in 2021. So we're rushing to catch everybody up with that. We got summer vacations, so we're having people off for that. COVID, we have a couple officers who are out with that. And in addition to all these protests and details that are going on. So those 11 officers, we might not even have 11 officers on the street some nights, especially on last out. Last out, we're paper thin. I just lost 2 guys who were resigning for other jobs. So right now, it's not a good time manpower-wise in our district. We try our best to adequately, spread our coverage out among our 3 PSAs. So with a total of 126, with actually 72 that are actually out there on the street, that's not a sufficient number of officers.
Captain, when you mentioned the 11, is that 11 that are on the street in Fishtown, or is that 11 out on the street in the entire district?
That's the entire district. Right. So we got 3 PSAs, 1, 2, and 3. So ideally, what we'd like to have is three cars patrolling each PSA.
And briefly, for everybody, for those that may know, PSA is a police service area. What, if you could describe where those are for 1, 2, and 3?
All right. So PSA 1 would be Front Street all the way to 10th, Lehigh to Norris. PSA 2 would be Front Street to 10th, Norris down to Poplar. And then PSA 3 is anything north of that. So PSA 3 would go from Front to Lehigh, Delaware, and Poplar to the river.
Now, with the PSAs, actually, they have, or they're supposed to have meetings. Is that right?
Yes.
Which PSA are we?
You would technically be 3.
3, okay. And do you know who controls setting that up?
Who controls setting what up? The meetings or the PSAs?
The PSA meetings.
Setting up the PSA meetings?
Yes.
We usually have them. So say, for instance, PSA 3 would usually be, that would be FNA. That's usually the 3rd Wednesday of each month. And then we have ECNA, which would be the 4th Monday, I believe, 4th Monday of the month. And then ORCA, which I believe is the 4th Tuesday of the month. And then we also have other various meetings, such as the Waterloo Rec Center, West Kensington Neighbors, Friends of Norris Square. Cinnamon could probably tell you the exact dates on them. I'm not quite sure the exact dates.
Gotcha. So, and what's the purpose of a PSA meeting, just so everybody knows?
Well, the purpose of the PSA meetings for residents to come out, voice their issues or concerns that they may have. And it's also a chance for us to get to know people on a personal level and to inform them of any issues or crime trends or patterns that might be going on in their area.
Got it. Now, you mentioned during our conversation that there's training that the officers go through. What type of training do all your officers have to go through in a calendar year? Briefly.
Well, we have our state mandated training. It's legal updates, CPR and first aid. They got to shoot at the gun range and qualify there. And then there's other classroom stuff that they usually change up on a yearly basis. This year we're doing professionalism. That's one of the new classes that we're doing. And there's other training that we have throughout the year that comes to our training bureau. You know, we got crisis intervention training, reality-based training, MACTAC training. Reality-based training as you go through different scenarios. It's basically like some sort of like de-escalation type training that they go through. MACTAC, that's like for like clearing houses and all that type of stuff. And then we have other training. We had some implicit bias training last year, but that's not one of the normally scheduled trainings that they offer.
When you were mentioning going back to the amount of officers you have, I guess how many do you think you realistically need to effectively patrol the district?
Honestly, I mean, I would say a minimum of 4 cars in each PSA. A
That's
patrol
2 officers
wagon
per car?
Well, it's either mainly it's just one officer in a car. I mean, ideally, you'd always like to pair up officers just for safety issues, but normally we just run solo cars. So any combination of 4 cars, whether it's solo or 2-person in each PSA, a patrol wagon, which is always 2-person, and ideally, I'd like to have a roving car, like a roving tom unit they call them, that would go into the high crime areas or areas that we're having issues in and work on that.
Just a couple more things from me, Captain, then I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts, have Kay get into all those fun things from our committee. First of all, is there any crime report you'd like to give, a district crime report to the people participating today?
Well, I didn't do anything for the entire district. I just did for areas that the bid covers.
That's perfect.
All right, so that would be from Front, Poplar to Montgomery, and then Frankfurt Ave stretching all the way up to Lehigh, and then Girard Avenue stretching from Front to Aramingo. And I did numbers from June 1st up until yesterday's date. So We have 0 shootings, 0 point of gun robberies. We had 4 other types of robberies, 2 which were domestic in nature, so we know who the offenders are on that, and then 2 other ones that were cleared by an arrest. One was an attempted carjacking, and one was an incident that took place on the L at Front Street. We had no aggravated assaults by gun. We had 3 other aggravated assaults. One was domestic in nature, and one was a known offender. 0 residential burglaries, 4 commercial burglaries. 3 of those were related to looting on June 1st. It was the Metro PCS, the 7-Eleven, and the Tri-State Finest Store. We had 7 stolen autos and 12 theft from autos, 4 of which involved tires and rims being stolen, and all 4 of those were reported on June 9th.
Is there a particular, and I know Kay's going to get into this later, a particular brand of crime that is most common in this commercial corridor?
Theft. Theft is, whether it be theft from auto, stolen auto, or any like type of package theft or bike theft, something like that. But theft is by far the most common.
Just 2 more from me, Captain, then I want to make sure I introduce Officer Smith and Donias to everyone. As you know, and for the people on this call, for a time, the Fishtown Kensington bid paid for an extra foot patrol. Can you, Captain, describe what that was, meaning how the officers were deployed, that it was overtime, et cetera?
Yeah, so it was very brief. It was only, a couple weeks, maybe a month,
Yeah.
if that. 2 officers were assigned, and basically what they did was they were assigned to the business corridor along Frankfurt Avenue, and they would just go in, check with each store owner, check to see if they had a store log. If they did, they'd sign them. If they didn't, we would try to provide them a log so officers could sign, even if the officers weren't working that beat, just regular officers working their tour could stop in and sign it. And it was also about building relations. Getting to know these store owners, having the store owners getting to know these officers on a personal basis, and just checking to see, what they were doing to, prevent themselves from being victims of crimes, whether it be if they had cameras or burglary alarms, adequate lighting, stuff like that. So I think it was a very, very useful and very beneficial for those store owners getting to have that type of interaction with those officers on a daily basis.
The officers that were assigned, as a result, were they pulled away from something else, or?
No. They were hired overtime. They had no effect on a manpower working that tour.
Does your district have the ability to do that without us paying for it?
No, not at all. I mean, we could stop in, but I mean, we can't just stay primarily along that corridor. I mean, we could stop in, sign the logs, chit chat for a little bit, but then, something comes out, they're going to have to go to that.
Gotcha. Last thing from me, Captain, before I turn it over to Kay Anderson and then to the group. Certainly, I know the concerns of the neighbors are, how do we rebuild trust and rebuild that feeling of safety? If you could briefly describe just what are some of the things that you and your officers are discussing or wanting to implement to help do that for everyone?
Just more community engagement, just being out there with the community, trying to participate in any type of events we can. I know it's very restricted right now as to what we can do with gatherings and everything, but just trying to get out there and engage. Get to know people, talk to people, and be more humanistic in our approach. I know Cinnamon and Jose will be able to talk a little bit further about a little event they have going on tomorrow in the area. But that's what it's all about, really. It's just getting out there and engaging and getting to know everybody and trying to rebuild trust and get back to where we were prior to June 1st.
And would you or your officers want to continue to be willing with like our group, especially our committee, as you know, and certainly the officers helped contribute to it. just mailed out a public safety survey to our stakeholders to sort of get a feel for concerns, problem areas. We're certainly hoping, Captain, that once we get the results, we can come back to you all to try to see how we can better affect the positive change in the area and better police. I guess that's not really a question, but with that, I want to introduce real fast before I turn it over to Kay. I know Officer Cinnamon Smith and Officer Jose Doñez on the call. Briefly, guys, can you just say hi, introduce yourselves and your title? There they are. Go ahead, Sonny and Cher. Unmute yourselves.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Now we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Officer Jose Doñez, and my title is Community Relations Officer.
Hey, everybody. I'm Cinnamon Smith, and I am the Crime Prevention Officer.
And we'll be getting to you guys in a minute, but I want to turn it over to Kay Anderson. Kay is not only our Director of Operations, but also the Chair of our Public Safety Committee, and really has been engaged with our stakeholders to try to really get to the nitty-gritty of what the concerns are. So, Kay, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. For those of you who are on the call and might have questions for the district, feel free to put them in the chat. Hopefully not out of control. And I will incorporate those into these questions as well. But we will have some more time at the end once I go through some of the questions that I've already received. A lot of these questions are about procedure and how police handle specific calls and what happens when we make a phone call to the cops. So I'd like to start by just asking that simple question. When we dial 911, how does that process actually work from when we call dispatch and how that call or issue gets displayed over to you guys as officers?
Do you want the captain to answer?
Is that for me?
Captain, why don't you start?
All right. So, okay. So the process starts, obviously you make the 911 call, dispatcher handles that assignment. It usually takes about 3 minutes for that call to get dispatched out. And our calls are dispatched out on a scale, a priority scale. Priority 1 being the highest, which is pretty much any crime in progress. And priority 5, for example, which would be like an illegal parker or, like a loud music type call. So that's how the calls are dispatched. Regarding the time frame that they're actually given out, it depends on a variety of reasons or a variety of ways. So, for instance, a call may sit on the board for a while because there's no available units to handle that. It may sit on the board for a while because the dispatcher, quite honestly, doesn't dispatch it in a timely fashion. And I've had instances where I've had to go over radio myself and request that the dispatchers put that assignment out. We also, it depends on how many cars are available in that PSA. So again, when we talk about the PSAs, there's 3 PSAs. There might be a car available in PSA 1 with no cars available in PSA 3, but they're not going to dispatch that call that's pending in PSA 3 to a car that works PSA 1, because then if a call comes in for PSA 1, nobody's available to answer that call, unless it's priority 1. If it's priority 1, they'll handle that call. But that's pretty much the process for handling assignments from radio.
So I know you said priority 1 is usually any crime in progress.
Yes.
Can you kind of speak to what constitutes a crime? Because I know that that's something that can be a little gray area. And, different types of language or triggers that the dispatchers are looking for on these calls to determine whether somebody's safety is really at risk.
All right. So a crime in progress would be like a burglary in progress. So the person will make the phone call, whether it be the actual victim or just an eyewitness, saying that, you know, somebody's breaking into, you know, 123 Main Street. It's a white male wearing a blue shirt, blue jeans, white sneakers with a backpack going through the front window of that location. So dispatch will send that out as a priority one. Someone burglary in progress, we'll respond. And then whether or not we do our investigation, it could be a founded assignment, or it could be just somebody that locked themselves out of their house and is trying to get in. What was the other part of that question, Kay?
Are there specific like words or language use that businesses or residents could use to you know, show that they're feeling unsafe, or let the dispatcher know the level of concern or unsafe?
Well, that's kind of a little tricky thing there, because we don't want people to say that they're in danger when they're really not. So, I mean, if somebody is in danger, yeah, absolutely. Give as much descriptive information as you can. You know, say if somebody's trying to break into their home, that, you know, they're kicking in the door or going through the window, something like that. But if they're not feeling threatened, please don't lie and say that you are, because we're going lights and sirens to that call. And, you know, I don't want to risk, you know, one of my officers or even a civilian getting potentially hurt if there's no threat to that incident.
So for calls that are maybe not violent in nature, I'm thinking like use of counterfeit, you know, loitering, more quality of life issues, things of that nature, property crimes. How do you respond to those calls? Is there a difference in attitude, or is there a different procedure that gets followed for crimes of those natures?
No, there's no difference in attitude. I mean, we respond to every job, you know, to provide service. But if it's not like a crime in progress, we're not going to go lights and sirens at a call. So if we get a call for like a hold up alarm at a bank, we're going to go lights and sirens at that. But if we get a call for somebody trying to, you know, cash a counterfeit check, we're going to drive normal driving procedures.
Gotcha. And then what about, I know loitering, as well as, you know, the 2 a.m. bar let out have been two of the most common safety concerns that our business owners have brought to us specifically. Do you have any advice or tips for business owners in dealing in those situations, whether or not to involve the police, when they should involve the police, things of that nature?
Well, I mean, when to involve the police is when, you know, people refuse to leave, or when there's a, you know, potential for some type of fight or confrontation to break out. But the thing with the loitering is that's pretty tricky, because now with the Bailey agreement, there's really like not a whole lot we could do about loitering. So that's kind of tricky. I mean, if somebody's loitering in front of a building, and they're not like harassing potential customers, if they're just standing there, really not a whole lot we can do, as long as they're not, you know, harassing anybody or committing a crime. But if they're in your store and they're harassing the customers, then yeah, we can do something about that.
Is there a way to report crimes, or maybe crime trends, or something that's a little more pervasive or ongoing besides calling 911 when you see a crime in action? I'm thinking about like drug sales or things like that, you know, are a little bit more pervasive of problems.
Yeah, you can always submit a crime tip, or you can just email my account. And that's probably the best way, is to email my account, because anytime they submit them crime tips, it usually takes a couple days for it to filter down, and we receive it at the district. So stuff like that, like potential drug sales, for example, if you have any information like that, as much descriptive info you can get, and then just email it to my account. It's police.co_@phila.gov, and I'll type that in the chat for anybody who might not have that.
And then this might be a question for Cinnamon more so than the captain. But as business owners and as a bid, what can we do to better support the public safety ecosystem for our community? Like, what are some tips that you have for business owners to better protect themselves and make their storefront safer?
I sent out tips for you guys that I wanted you to forward to all the bid stakeholders. Also, at any given time, I could come out and visit the businesses and kind of help them look over where their weak points are. And also, when having a plan, like you said about let out, like 2 a.m. let out, the bars, the key here is to prevent anything from happening. So having a plan to, like, all right, what do we do when we have that one unruly guest, or we have the one guy refusing to leave? And also knowing when you call 911, like, I'm just going to use the Saint as an example. So we all know the Saint has a door in the front, and then they have a door on the side, and then they have like a takeout window. So like if you're having a problem at the Saint bar at 2 a.m., you want to specify, like, all right, I'm having a problem near the takeout window. So when the officers show up, you know, they can immediately go to where they're needed. Or like somewhere like Fishtown Jewelers, how she has like that driveway on the side. So like you have to specify where the issue is. If you have a man in your driveway, you don't want to just give the address like, hey, yeah, I'm at Fishtown Jewelers, there's a man outside my business. If you can specify, and like the captain said, a good description, you know, that will help us when we show up. If I drive by, I don't know if it's just a guy out front of the jewelry store, or, hey, if you say it's, you know, a white guy wearing a blue shirt and, you know, blue pants, then I can look for the right person to stop and investigate. It gives me more reason to stop the person and investigate what they were just doing in that area. But having a plan is key. Having a plan for closing, when you close, what you do with your money, what you're doing. But I'll come out and speak to everybody individually, because everybody's individual needs are different also. So, you know, a jewelry store is going to be a lot different than like a food takeout place or a clothing shop and a bar. Everybody's needs are different. So, you know, you have to have a plan for all those different needs and weaknesses and things like that.
Awesome. And if somebody wanted to take you up on that offer, how would they get in touch with you to do so?
They could email me, my cinnamon.smith@phila.gov. I'll include it also in the chat so they could. Awesome. And then if you guys could just forward all those tips to all your stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And like, I would love to come out at any time though and be helpful in any way to prevent anything from happening.
It's going out in our newsletter today.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
So that's all of the questions that I had. I wanted to open it up to the rest of our committee and board and anybody else who's on this call to either speak about, you know, procedural questions like the ones I've been asking, or even speak to some specific crime or safety issues that you've been seeing in your part of Fishtown.
I have a question. This is either for the captain or really more Jose and Cinnamon. Although the city's business security camera program has been put on hold because of the COVID issues, are there any plans for anyone in the district to help our businesses, not just necessarily get the cameras, we can help them do that, but how to set them up? And do you guys keep a log of the businesses that have them? Eddie?
We could probably, Mike, our analyst, Mike Snock, is really good with the cameras. So if anybody is getting cameras installed, maybe he might be the person. that might be able to help them out with that. And as far as the thing with the logs with cameras, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think SNOC does have a list of businesses with cameras.
A question, I know one of the things that has come up as we're looking at ways to not overuse you guys is, I know Kay was getting into it, we talk about loitering. You know, we'll oftentimes, we may see people that are struggling with one issue or another that, you know, maybe homeless, maybe have addiction. They're not necessarily committing a crime. And the goal is never just to simply move them. We'd like to help them. Or do you guys have any mechanisms in place as to what to do to deal with something like that?
Well, yeah, we have our homeless service detail. That's run by a sergeant, and I believe there's 10 cops that work on that, 12 cops, Monday through Friday, all 3 tours. And they're the subject experts in that regards. They have a lot of contacts with different services, whether it be mental health, drug and alcohol, or even you know, trying to find them shelter. So you know, they're the people that we depend on for situations like that.
John Sosowski, I think you have a question if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So just to elaborate on what you were just saying with the homeless, I think in our last meeting, Mark, we had talked about addiction, homelessness, and other nonviolent or low crimes, I guess. Should we be calling 911? I mean, or I think we talked about getting a list of phone numbers to, it sounds like the police department, especially the 26th district, is understaffed and overworked right now. So does it help for us not to call 911 if we see homeless people and call some of the phone numbers that I think, Mark, that you guys are getting together for the business owners? I see, would that help? Are there things that we're calling 911 for that we shouldn't be? Like right now, if someone's parked in front of a fire hydrant, I need to call 911. I don't have a number to call PPA, which runs the district. Or if I see a homeless person starting to put a tent up in front of the church on Allen's in front, I need to call 911. So on and so on. Are there low priority things that we could be calling other people and not using your resources for?
Well, I think it depends on the situation. You know, if you see a homeless person, for example, who looks like they're in dire need of some help or medical attention, then yeah, obviously call 911. If you just see a homeless person, you know, walking up and down the street or sitting in the park, I wouldn't call 911 on that. In reference to setting up encampments, that's really not a police matter. It's more of an Office of Homeless Service matter. But like I said, our service detail officers, they do handle that. So you can call us up for that, and we could go out there and we could try to offer them some type of services. But we're not going to be able to enforce them on the encampment issue. But we can definitely try to provide service.
And then just one more thing, just to follow up. So some of the Facebook groups that we're all in, as far as like New, Old, and Awesome and different ones, have made negative comments towards police interaction with people with drug addictions and homeless people and things like that. And I think it would probably be helpful if people understood the difference between how we react to a problem and how police officers are taught in their training to handle a problem. So when we walk into a room, and especially, you know, I grew up in the city, so I have a good I have family members who are police officers, friends who are police officers, so I have a good understanding of growing up in the city and how a police officer talks to me, because it's the same way I've been talked to my whole life by police officers. And you guys are trained to like take command of a situation. Your voices are usually louder. You're usually more to the point. And a lot of people now, especially in the 26th, aren't from Philadelphia, and view a police officer trying to take control of a situation as disrespectful, among other things. I don't need to elaborate, but they just see the situation as completely different. And I don't think they understand how you're trained. I mean, I've had conversations with people that when there is a police shooting, why don't you aim for the leg? Obviously, you're not trained that way. And then there's obviously training issues of when you pull a gun out, when you don't pull a gun out, why you do it. All those things, I really think, especially today, people need to understand why police officers act the way they act and do the things that they do, so that they could better understand the situation and not, I don't know, not help the situation or add to it or put, you know, a negative them versus us connotation to it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the exact question there. So basically, what I tell my officers to do is treat people how you want to be treated. That's how you start off. You don't want to start off too high because you might not be able to bring it back down. So you want to start low, and then if it has to rise to a certain point, then it rises at that certain point. But you don't want to start off right away at the ceiling. You should start off at the floor, and then if it has to work its way up that way, work it up. But no, obviously, you want to treat people with respect. You want to be professional. You want to be empathetic towards other people's needs. And that's pretty much, you know, what you have to do as an officer when you're interacting with people. You don't want to, you know, treat people like shit just because they're a drug addict or they're homeless. They're people too. And it's important that we stress that to our officers who are out there every day doing that. There should be some more training. There should be, you know, yearly training on interactions with people. Because sometimes, you know, officers, you know, like nowadays, I mean, they're stressed out, you know, with all the things that are going on in society today, and they've been overworked. They're fatigued mentally, physically, emotionally. And, you know, sometimes these people, they might see these officers on a bad day interacting with people. And, you know, every other day, you know, they might be cool, calm, and collective and respectful towards people. So it's very important that we stress to our officers, you know, to maintain that composure, to maintain that professionalism when interacting with people on a daily basis.
If I could jump in, because we're running to almost noon, so I want to make sure we get everybody in. But that might be a good lead-in, Captain. We actually have, and I see Richie Schultz from Lutheran Settlement House on. Maybe Richie can give a quick point, and we've actually started virtual meetings with Lutheran, where it's our focus is creative interventions to violence. We're trying to find really other ways when we're talking about issues like this, so maybe the police really wouldn't be who we would call. Richie, is there anything briefly you'd want to jump in and add when we have situations like this, whether it's someone suffering, whether homeless, mental illness, drug addiction, anything we should be cognizant of? Not to put you on the spot.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mark. I would just say one thing that just one resource to offer is the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline as a place to call in order to get support, counseling, immediate resources, and to offer that number to folks who are potentially looking for shelter. Who are
Excuse me, we got a disturbance. We got to go real quick, okay?
Thanks, guys.
All right, bye.
Be safe.
All right.
Oh. Looks like we're going with them.
No, stay on.
And also, yeah, we offer de-escalation training so that in situations where folks feel safe enough to try to de-escalate as opposed to rely on the police to come in for an incident, we're here and available to build your businesses and organizations' capacities to handle those things in your communities as well.
And I know Richie's working on, and apologies if I missed you sending it out, Richie, a list of other numbers we can call, behavioral health, the homeless outreach line through Project Home, some other resources so that there are alternatives to the police, so they're able to do investigate some bigger crimes.
Thank you, Erica. I didn't see you on, or I would have called on you too.
Oh, you can call on Richie. He's the expert.
One last thing, Don Allen, who was one of our stakeholders. Captain Don was one of the last ones on the call last time who, to me, we know we're not going to get into anything with June 1st or anything like that. But certainly I think eloquently expressed feeling unsafe now. I know he's got some public safety things he'd like to bring up, but so Don knows he can't get into what happened, but I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak. Go ahead, Don.
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay, cool. So I guess it was, there's two kind of topics that I wanted to talk about. One is slightly referring to 6-1, but I know we can't really talk about what happened that night or how it's being handled, but I maybe would like to address maybe how we can move forward from it. But the other one I would like to maybe start with, because it kind of piggybacks off of the last two commenters. In terms of like the last one the gentleman was saying about the training, I encountered an experience recently where there was a woman who was clearly having a breakdown. She was on drugs. The police were involved. And I had no complaints about how the police handled it, but it kind of goes to how the gentleman was talking about. It was just sad. It was a very sad situation. There wasn't something in place to help her in that regard. And the police did fine. You all did as you were trained to do, and it was handled well. But to speak on that, just witnessing it got me thinking, is there something that we can do as a community, maybe with the bid and the police? I don't know if it really, liability starts to come into place, and maybe we can't, but is there a way that we can identify people who live in our community who are social workers or nurses or people that can almost be on call in a way that when a situation like that comes up, they kind of get a heads up to, the police can still go and do as they're trained, but there could be a social worker who is a little more trained just to be and I'm not saying police weren't compassionate, but just to be, it's fine. I called it like, we should have an organization called HUN. Like everyone calls them and feel like, hey HUN. We should have an organization called HUN, like helping underserved neighbors, where you can just like, hey HUN, how you doing? Like, you okay? So just wondering if there was something, and I also encountered another experience where I had to kind of intervene and lead a woman out of a situation that was pretty sketchy. And then that got me thinking, well, can we also be doing something where it was late at night and I happen to be out walking with my dogs? Is there something that we can do as a community where we can organize volunteers who, we're not there to stop crime, but there to be a resource to people who are victims in a moment? So that was kind of the one topic I wanted to talk about, just piggybacking off that. Is there something that we can do to create these programs that we're saying like, well, we can call this person or that person, but the city's doesn't meet our needs as it is. So is there something that we can do proactively to meet our own needs, I guess is the question.
And I'll jump in before I let the captain, and I'd love to have Erica and Richie join in. Don and I spoke a little bit about this before during our call. One of my hopes, and listen, as COVID has really affected everything, funding and so forth, one of the things the bids we talk about is there a way to have, Center City has similar like community ambassadors who are, they walk around the neighborhood, whether it's just helping someone, hey, there's Frankfurt Hall, or they see something that needs help, and whether they can call 911 or they can call Lutheran or they can call Adult Protective Services, something that can get someone to help, and it's someone where an eyes and ears on the neighborhood. So that's something that we'll certainly talk about, not just as a public safety committee, but certainly something to bring to our board directors as we move to 2021. Richie or Erica, is there anything, I mean, because this is right in your wheelhouse in some ways, because we're lucky to have you as a stakeholder in our community. Is there anything you can add?
Could you ask the question one more time, please?
Would you ask him to restate the question?
Yep.
Basically, he's looking for, is there ways that we can have more eyes and ears on the street to get these people who...
From the community.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like a really nutrient dense question that I'd definitely be happy to send resources out around. And just two things to quickly offer there is, one, there have been, particularly in Philadelphia, lots of mutual aid networks that have been developing where people are building relationships across differences and sharing resources and trying to contend with, navigate conflicts and harm in ways that actually are using those relationships. So it's a lot easier to deal with an unhoused person who's maybe having a mental health thing if you actually know that person, right?
Yeah.
But trying to build those actually accountable communities where people are able to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I just will offer right now is, I think there's just a deeper thing here around, like, what are the causes of this in the first place? And so one of the ways that we can actually deal with the unhoused space or the opioid is supporting organizations like the Coalition for Affordable Communities that are fighting for affordable housing, or fighting for adaptive modifications for disabled folks who become unhoused because they don't have access to that. Or fighting for overdose prevention sites as a different sort of public health measure to deal with opioid use and housing insecurity. So.
And I'll just add that I think these are like huge issues and huge questions. So we as Lutheran Settlement House are really committed to working with you all to design a series of trainings or provide help to create materials, or whatever way that we can offer ourselves as experts to help start training the community in how, I think and Richie was posing this question in the other training we did, what's the vision for our community? What do we want Fishtown to be? So determining what that is, and then designing trainings or whatever information we need so that we as community members learn and forge a path forward to help address some of those root causes of these huge social justice issues, and how we want to respond in a way from a care and health perspective rather than a punitive one, if that's how we're deciding to move forward. So we're here. I'm excited to work with everyone to design that. I don't know if we have an answer today. It's just really, really big, but I'm excited that everyone is committed to figuring that out and are asking really important questions.
Don, just so you know, that's one of our goals with Lutheran that we just started. Is right now because of COVID, we have to do a lot of things by Zoom, but we want to continue to have trainings. I think what Erica said is so very important for all of us, which I love about this group. We want to do things. We don't just want to talk. And it takes time when you have these long-standing issues to find creative solutions where we as a community step up. Yes, we always have to worry about liability issues, but there's a lot of resources I know Lutheran has available, that the police have available. And I think that we want everything to be collaborative between us. Yeah. We have a couple more minutes. Don, I know you wanted to ask something or raise something, but in moving forward, and I don't want to leave.
Don, you're muted.
And all that. I just think it's important in moving forward, we understand that there are a lot of people who are because I've spoken to a lot of people just to get their feelings. A lot of people are really feeling extremely unsafe. They're feeling further victimized and marginalized. They are very adamantly coming for Captain Fisher's job. I don't know if it's going to blow over, is my point. So that being said, I just wanted to say, in moving forward, some things that I don't know if they'll help. Again, there's the investigation that'll handle everything at large, but something I would like to propose is possibly inclusion and diversity training for the officers who are on site that night. It just might show to the community that we're being proactive and engaged with the community. I've spoken to someone who does that kind of work, a consultant, so I can help facilitate that if that's something that you want to do moving forward. And also, I know a lot of people are saying that they want more accountability for the people who committed crimes that night. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it may behoove us moving forward to be working in that action, to be holding some of those people who were committing crimes that night to be held accountable. And I just feel like it's important to say that because, like I said, a lot of people are expressing to me that they feel further marginalized and victimized. We have a lot of LGBTQIA people in the community now. We have a lot of people of color in the community now. And Fishtown's like on the Forbes list is the hottest neighborhood in the country. So we have kind of the country looking at us now. So I just feel it's important to, in moving forward, we have an understanding that it's not something necessarily that was just like, oops, like, let's move on. It's something that I think action will need to be taken by the 26th, just to show, like he's saying, he wants to engage more with the community. It would show the community that's feeling marginalized that you're engaged in protecting us moving forward. So I just wanted to throw those out there. And of course, because I have to throw it out there just because I feel like I'm the self-appointed spokesperson of the people who were victimized. Of course, people are also saying that it would go a long way if Captain Fisher were to resign or to transfer. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just.
And nor are we getting into any of that today.
Exactly. I'm just saying I feel like that I should throw that out as for what it is. But like I said, I think inclusion and diversity training might be a really good step, and also holding other people accountable. But I know you can't talk about it, so I just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you. And one of the reasons why I wanted Don to talk, and I remember calling him afterwards, which was how much he fell over himself. He really went out of his way to be respectful while expressing his opinion, and that's really all we want to do. So he understands that obviously we can't comment about any of those things, and neither can the captain, though we are concluding. So I want to let the captain make any final statements. Besides, I want to thank him for his time today. I want to thank all of you for your time today. Captain, is there anything you want to conclude with?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Don's point about inclusion and diversity training. You said you know somebody that does that?
Yeah, I've actually contacted them. They're actually relatively well known. They're in LA, but I've talked to them about consulting it, and they feel it's something that I could help facilitate with them consulting.
All right, well, that'd be something I would try to run by our training bureau to see if we can get something set up. I mean, not only to train 26th district, but citywide.
That would be great.
And another thing is, I think the residents in this Fishtown community, the new people versus the old heads, that shouldn't be that mentality. I mean, these are all living here in the same community. I think that there should be some sort of mediation between those types of people, because there's no reason for animosity to linger in this area when you're all living here and trying to make the community better.
And if I may say, just since you mentioned it, that a lot of us do have this unnerving feeling, like when I go to the gas station and the guy next to me in line, I'm like, is he someone that was with a bat? Is he someone that's saying bad things about me online? And even when my client said, like, her female partner has said, like, oh, that looks like maybe it was one of the guys with the bats. And then they were like, oh my God, was? So there's this unnerving feeling where we're all side-eyeing our neighbors, and that's terrible. I don't want that.
Yeah, it's a shame. And unfortunately, I mean, this time of the year would be like the perfect time to hold some type of event where everybody's included.
Yeah.
You know? That way people get to converse with each other and get to know each other.
Yeah.
And then, you know, work on rectifying the events of that night, and, you know, taking positive steps forward, because there's really no need for one group to dislike another group. You know, if they're both living in the same neighborhood, you should get along, you know. It's pretty simple in my estimation, but
yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely steps that need to be taken, and, you know, hopefully sometime soon, you know, maybe we can get involved and try to facilitate something where, you know, we bring both sides together and, you know, try to work on this.
That's really what we need. Yeah.
That would be great. And however we can help. I know Councilman Squilla joined us late. I didn't want to depart before giving His Honor a chance to just make any comments, say a few things. So, Mark, if you're still there, if you want to unmute yourself.
His Honor?
Hello, you're not by the Golden Gate Bridge.
No, I'll put that back on if you want. I was on my phone, the bridge one. I don't know how to get that off, but I have to figure it out. No, listen, during these times, I know everything's challenging, but I have faith in the leadership of the bid and you know, how this progresses. It's challenging times with COVID and the unrest, but you know, I believe we'll get through that, and I think we'll see, you know, as we hopefully work through the end of the year, start seeing some more businesses hopefully be able to get through this challenge. I noticed that the businesses that had associations with bids are a lot better off applying for some of the subsidies and stimulus that were out there, and the ones that weren't really struggled to get the information. So, you know, I want to thank the bid for doing what they're doing and working with the businesses to try to keep them afloat during these times. And, you know, we're here to work with you as we, you know, get through this challenge, and hopefully by the end of the year get back to some type of normality. Not sure what that's going to look like, but you know, we just got to keep doing what we're doing and hope for the best.
Thank you, Mark. And you know, one of the things we're very lucky about in this district are the people who own the businesses or run the businesses here. That's what makes this place so special. That's why we've all been able to really get through all of this together, not just COVID, but the, you know, the things that have happened over the past month. And that's why I have every confidence that we're going to thrive better than ever moving forward. I want to thank Captain Fisher again for his time, candor, and information today. I know Officers Smith and Dunges had to go. I want to thank Erica and Richie from Lutheran. I want to thank all of you. I feel like I'm on a game show. And I want to thank my staff, Kay and Randy, you know, for really all the great work they do. And there'll be more of these, so don't think this is one and done, but we appreciate your time today. And everybody stay dry out there. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you all. Stay safe.